The Nintendo 3DS has had a wild journey. What was once considered the disappointing follow-up to the best-selling handheld of all time, the OG DS, underselling so much that Nintendo dropped the price. Could you imagine it happening now? Been crawling back through revisions and exclusives to become a certified cult classic, just in time for the Switch to overshadow it by becoming the second best-selling handheld of all time. And now in the current day, despite everything it had going against it, the 3DS has become a console where those who actually have it just love, including me. I think this thing is awesome. Even with access to other ways to play games, especially portably, I still find myself drawn to this console. It's got a great form factor, excellent games, and even without the 3D screen, it just feels great to use. Over the years, and now with us becoming a retro console that's no longer in development, more and more people have started to kind of develop a love for the 3DS. The fact that it had a great library, plus the entire DS library, and then some possibility to emulate systems like the GBA and stuff like the SNES. The 3DS kind of became one of the best deals in gaming. There's even been this narrative of, don't buy a Switch 2, just get a modded 3DS. It could do so much in a small package, and they weren't that expensive. At least they weren't that expensive. Nowadays, thanks to all this very well-deserved love and hype, prices of these consoles has ballooned way out of control, to the point where it's consistently more expensive to get one of these instead of a Switch Lite or another more powerful handheld console like the Retro Pocket 4 Pro. It's obviously a great console to have, but is it a great console to buy, or has the hype kind of ruined it? So in this video, we're going to explore some of the major things the 3DS has going for it, evincing if those factors still make it a worthwhile console in the current state of handheld gaming. And hopefully by the end, you'll have a more educated take on if this console is actually worth it for you specifically. Because there's definitely a market of people that just are going to want this, and one major thing that's making that a reality is the nostalgia. One thing the 3DS has a lock on is the nostalgia factor. It's always one of the first things people bring up in videos about this console being so awesome and worth it. Because obviously, if you grew up with a 3DS and now you're just looking to effectively, like, you know, buy your childhood back, walk down memory lane a bit, then nothing's really going to do it better than original hardware. It really just comes down to, do you get the model you had back then, or do you try and get the best one for you now? But getting something that is a 3DS is pretty essential. We can put that to bed right off the rip. But for me personally, I'm not really nostalgic about this. Sure, the 3DS came out when I was 9, but I didn't actually get one until I got my new 2DS XL, say that 5 times fast, second hand in my second to last year of high school, which was 2019. Which, like, yeah, I can get nostalgic for that time, but it's not formative years nostalgia, you know, that hits different. I also got a Switch Lite right before the world shut down, you know, from you know what, but now the Switch kind of dominates any major feelings of nostalgia I have from handheld gaming in that time. It's only been semi-recently that I've started to really appreciate how great this console is. I'm saying this device could stand on its own without nostalgia. It is objectively good, and there's even some stuff it does better than the Switch, such as aspects of its form factor. In a world where handhelds just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, having a handheld that can actually be held in a hand is actually something that's kind of nice to have for a change. Not that I have the huge, you know, portable PCs like the Steam Deck and Lenovo Legion. Not that I wouldn't mind having one, you know, I'd love to do a review if you know what I mean. But my Switch Lite and Retroid just aren't pocketable, versus this absolutely is. It's like the exact same size as my phone. This thing being a clamshell is so clutch. The screen is naturally protected, and I always feel like the controls kind of lean into that style of play that's more like quick bursts instead of long sessions. It's very easy to just pick up for a short period of time and just get into something. That, obviously enhanced by the superb standby mode, means you can really end up using this thing in scenarios where using a Switch just feels kind of absurd. And now another thing about its form factor, I'm not sure if you've noticed, but this thing is dual screens, which of course adds heaps of different kinds of functionality, both to games and in the menus, and just overall makes the experience better, but also makes the system super awkward to emulate. And playing any of these games really does need 2 screens for the best experience. To the point that, like, the technology to play these games in a higher fidelity on better screens absolutely exists, the device just doesn't, making the 3DS this weird little middle class where, yes, it's definitely weaker than the mainstream systems now. It's still objectively the best way to play its games, until now. Other clamshells have started to become more common, most notably the Retroid Flip 2, but also thinking about those like GBA SP emulators. Those could easily all be your like pocketable sidekick system that has still plenty of depth to the games it can play. The Retro Flip 2 can also definitely play 3DS, it just would be, again, a bit awkward because it doesn't have that second screen, which is why it's good that these companies are now releasing 2-screen devices. The now kind of infamous Retroid Flip screen add-on, which is great if you still want to use that form factor of the rectangles, but actually, you know, have a second screen to play all your second screen games, or just to, you know, watch YouTube or something. But the one everyone's really hyped about is the AYN Thor. This is the console that might actually knock the 3DS off its pedestal. Better screens, 2 actual joysticks, potentially better ergonomics while still in this form factor, and way more power while inexplicably costing pretty similar depending how much you get your 3DS for. So obviously this is the logical choice. Get this, don't get a 3DS. And on paper, yes. If everything goes to plan, yes. At the time of this recording, the AYN Thor isn't out yet. And you know, it's modern gaming, so everything could go wrong, to be honest. But I feel like AYN's got a pretty good reputation. People love the Odin series. And so we could believe that the hardware is probably going to be pretty good. But I do have a couple concerns. First, the controls. I worry this may not be as comfortable as the 3DS. Again, the 3DS really leans to the fact that it's built for quick play. The circle pad and nub included, like it's not that intense. This is dual joysticks, like there's a lot of movement that happens there. It might not just feel as good as the 3DS's pretty fantastic layout. Also doesn't have the advantage that games are being made specifically for that setup, like with the 3DS. Also, those joysticks are recessed so it can close as a clamshell, and I am curious how that's going to feel. I bet with an extra grip, it will probably feel pretty good. If it's starting to get in the way of it being super pocketable, then it's sort of losing the point a little bit. We're also all hoping that the hinge is good. The hinge on these are pretty good. I'm still shocked that mine is fine at this day and age. Again, this was secondhand when I got it. But after the Flip 2, I'm just inherently more nervous now. I'll be real. Again, it could be fine. I mean, it's not like Nintendo figured out the ultimate comfort solution here. I still have to hit this pose a lot when I'm playing games, so my hands don't go numb. It'll just be really interesting to compare when this thing finally drops. Another big factor the 3DS has going for it is the fact that it has vibes. There's no real better way to say it. This console just has so much more personality than everything else. I think that's because the 3DS comes from a time when Nintendo was kind of struggling. The Wii U was a disaster, and the 3DS wasn't exactly setting any sales chart on fire. And so I feel like in an effort to stand out, they put way more creative choices into the software. There's this very earnest feeling about the 3DS home versus, say, the Switch, which is criticized for being very cold and straight to the point. Not to say the 3DS menu isn't, you know, to the point. It's very easy to navigate. There's also just so much more on it. And it has a camera. It is crazy to think that while these consoles are reaching record high prices, you can also find them in mosh pits. There's definitely a percentage just getting snapped. It's not helping supply. It definitely isn't. But aside from that, there's also a bunch of other quirky software. You can make a me. Street Pass was cool back in the day. There's Air Raiders. You'll never use it, but it's there. There's a whole sound mixer you can mess around with. But my favorite is the activity tracker. I've realized I'm a big fan of seeing like what I'm playing displayed in creative ways. Feels like a collection of experiences. It's kind of what I get from it. And the Switch one's cool. I like the one that's on the Switch, but this is just so much better. I also can't believe that my two most played games on this are racing games, and neither of them are Mario Kart. But speaking of the games, it's another way where this personality becomes even more apparent. Not to keep bashing on the Switch, but on there, games are just a little profile picture. You get an image, and that's it. But on the 3DS, you get both a creative icon that's normally different to like just the cover of the game, and then also when you have it selected, you get a whole like title or sometimes spinning diorama that pops up. Also, it spins faster if you blow on it. Isn't that fun? And it gets more fun after you mod your console and get full control of the customization. Having themes on this system is so great. Having the dual screen just makes it feel so much cooler. I don't really know what it is. But the most important part about all of this is that it just works. Even the modding process was dead easy. Being on that camera, you can download stuff with QR codes. It's so fun just scrolling on a theme website and be like, yeah, I like that one. Got it. Done. It's so simple. And there's no like file system you have to interface with to get anything done. I genuinely don't think you find this beautiful like, Apple-like simplicity anywhere else. Even on the 4. The 4 is an Android emulator. And look, as great as these things are, my god, do they take a lot of tinkering. There is no, it just works factor with these. There is a lot of work involved. And I just know that a second screen will not make this any easier. You're also operating on Android, which feels like a phone, which in a hilarious turn of events is no longer a good thing. You're just definitely not going to have that nice seamless console experience. Yes, there are front ends, which are great. Shout out Emulation Station. But those also require tinkering. And I'm really yet to see one that has the same charm as the 3DS stock system. Okay, yeah, so this got announced as I was writing this video. This could be special. This could be cool. Isu is a front end being developed by the very talented Ukasi. But this looks phenomenal. The vibes are impeccable. This is everything I could possibly want for a front end. And this working on the 4 would be amazing. Assuming it works. That's the massive thing here. It has to be noted that not only is this a one-person team, but this is their debut project. Unfortunately, there is plenty to go wrong. And so I can't completely back on this and be like, hey, this is the ideal 3DS replacement. You should probably spend your money on this. But it does feel like a matter of time until we figure this out. And while we're here, I'm just gonna say it. I feel like Nintendo's got to be seeing this. I don't have much to back this. The clamshell handheld arena is their arena. From the Game & Watch to the GBASP to the DS and then the 3DS. This was their thing, and now someone else is stealing their lunch. What I'm proposing is maybe instead of a Switch 2 Lite, although that would also still be great, it's just a 3DS with a Switch internal. It feels pretty possible. I feel like this is like not an impossible thing to pull off. I imagine they're a little scared of the whole dual screen home console because of the Wii U, but I think, I don't know. I think there's some money to be made there, and I know they like doing that. So, with all that said, the 3DS is still technically, at the time of recording, the best way to play 3DS games. Is the game library in itself enough to sway you for a purchase? Well, it's complicated. The library is fantastic. Genuinely one of the most rewarding systems to find hidden gems on. I am constantly surprised by the sheer volume of high quality experiences on this console. And that's not even touching the first party stuff. I'm yet to play a Pokemon game on this thing. But like seriously, this thing has great exclusives and great ports. What else could you ask for? It's an RPG machine, but then you've also got shooters, racing games, including like a whole ass F1 game. It's amazing for platformers. And then Homebrew only makes everything better. Maybe the best way to play Flappy Bird. And finally playing Halo on the DS system, after obsessing over the old demo video that came out years ago as a kid, it was a super satisfying experience. And also like people join my game. Like people play this on a regular basis. There's also emulation opportunity. But if that's where your head's going and if that's what's going to sway you to buy a 3DS, maybe buy an emulator. And that's kind of the situation. As great as this library is, it's just really hard to compete nowadays. The library of games Android emulators can play is ridiculous. Like, it's hard to really put into words just like the number of amazing experiences you can get on these things. There's so many consoles, there's so many games. And then there's like stuff that's like native to Android, which is surprisingly good. Apparently Subnautica Android runs better than the Switch one. I haven't tested it, this is what I've heard. And now the growing development of software like Game Hub is effectively turning these things into Steam Deck lights, which is just like, if you like indies, wow. And like, yeah, they can run 3DS games as well. Most of them don't have that second screen at the moment, but you know, they technically work on here. And when you're paying the same amount of money, it's very hard to say that the 3DS is really worth it. There's also obviously the Switch. The games are likely going to be inherently more expensive, but the Switch is a great console. It's my favorite console of all time. And there's plenty of games on the 3DS that I'm playing where I'm like, yeah, this is great, but I am wondering if this would just be better on the Switch. The longer I own my Retroid, the more I'm just like, wow, it can play that? Wait, hold on. I'm always surprised by how far it goes. And look, I'm surprised by how deep the 3DS library went, but it's a finite space. It's not exactly going to get a lot better in the years to come. I'm glad to have it, but I just feel extremely fortunate that I got it for under retail, because I do think it's a very hard thing to justify nowadays. So, is the 3DS worth it to anyone? More importantly, is it worth it to you? Well, obviously, you're going to know that more than me. Hopefully after watching this video, you got a better idea. If you're just inherently looking for the nostalgia or the specific experience of the 3DS, and you're valid in doing so, the 3DS is obviously what you're looking for. Unfortunately, you're going to be paying a high price. The 3DS should really be in its period where it's cheap right now, similar to what like the DS went through and the PSP. I got both of mine for $40. So that window for the 3DS has definitely been cut very short. If you're looking for just a genuinely good handheld console, primarily for playing on like the bus or something, places where portability is definitely a massive factor. If you can find a 3DS for a reasonable price, ideally under retail, like someone just wants to get rid of their one, absolutely it's worth it there. I don't think you'd regret that purchase. It is still very relevant in that space. However, especially if you can't get it for a reasonable price, I would absolutely elevate the other options. Elevate? Evaluate. If you have the budget, then something like the Retroid Flip 2 or the AYN Thor, which the previews have come out just as I've been recording this, and it looks pretty good. There's also obviously other cheap clamshells or just cheap handhelds in general. Depending how deep you want to go, you could probably get a pretty good deal. You could get a very good time killer for a very cheap price. But although the 3DS should be the obvious option here for a budget, high quality handheld, it isn't, and we can only blame the hype. So to answer the question, did hype ruin the 3DS? Yeah, it did. But when it deserves all the hype it's getting, it's hard to be mad. Hopefully you enjoyed watching this video. I had a lot of fun making it. Subscribe if you haven't already, and YouTube's about to recommend you another video of mine you might like, so maybe give that a go. I'll catch you later. Bye.